How is it going, guys? Today we are going to be working on the Tacoma. I've been running into some vibration issues when driving the truck, and I've been able to narrow it down to the U-joints in the drive shaft, so that is what we're going to be replacing today. Now, let me clarify what I mean when I say vibrations. Essentially, when I am on the gas and the engine is under load, I can feel a pretty significant vibration underneath my seat, but when I let off the gas and the truck is just cruising, that vibration goes away, and that is due to the play in the U-joints. Now, that vibration could be a multitude of different things, but there's a couple of other symptoms to look for as well. One being a noise when you shift from drive to reverse or vice versa, as well as leaking transmission fluid where the drive shaft goes into the transmission because that seal gets damaged. But probably the best way to check is to actually get underneath the car and visually inspect the U-joints. So taking a look underneath the truck, this is the front of the drive shaft, and this is your U-joint. Depending on the model or trim of your truck, you may have 3 or 2 of these. And the best way to check is to grab a hold of the drive shaft and give it a good wiggle. And if you see any play whatsoever like that, that's a pretty good sign that those U-joints have gone bad and they need replacing. Now I checked the other 2 on this car and they are good, but I'm gonna go ahead and replace them anyway while we have the drive shaft off. So let's go ahead and get this off of the car. Before we remove the drive shaft, we need some reference points to know how to put this back together so it doesn't get out of balance. So what I've done is taken a paint marker and made some marks on the drive shaft and where the U-joints install into. And also don't forget to make a mark where the drive shaft meets up with the rear diff so you can get that put back together exactly how it was. Once we got everything marked, we can remove the 4 14mm nuts and bolts that are holding the drive shaft to the rear diff. You can kind of see that I sprayed everything down with some PB Blaster. Highly recommend you do this a couple hours ahead of time to let it soak and hopefully helped break these free a little bit easier. All right, so before I remove the last bolt, I'm gonna put a jack or a stand underneath the drive shaft just so it doesn't fall right away. But it also might need some help from a big hammer as well to break free, so I guess we'll find out. It's not budging from the rear diff, so we're gonna give it a couple whacks with the hammer. Just make sure you're not hammering this area of the drive shaft. Just hammer on the end here so you don't damage it. There we go. We're gonna move to the middle of the drive shaft where we've got 2 14mm bolts holding this section in place. Once we have those removed, we'll be able to slide the drive shaft towards the back of the truck and out of the transmission. Just make sure you've got some sort of drip tray underneath where the drive shaft inserts into the transmission because there is a chance that some of the transmission fluid will leak out when you're doing this. There we go. Before we actually do anything to the drive shaft itself, I'm gonna replace the seal that I said was leaking earlier. I'm gonna use a seal puller from Harbor Freight. I'll link that down below, and I'll leave the part number for the new seal as well. But this just inserts into here, and then you pry the old seal out. There we go. Now we can slide the new seal in. Then you're gonna wanna take either a socket or something that has the same diameter of that seal, and then we can hammer it into place. With the new seal installed, we can move on to the drive shaft. Now I'm just gonna show you one of the U-joints because the rest are essentially the same process. and this is the one that's bad. The first thing we are gonna need to do is remove these retaining clips here with a set of pliers, but chances are, if it's rusty, you're gonna need to use a flathead screwdriver and a hammer as well to help get these out. And it's looking like that is what I'm gonna need to do with these. Okay, there's 1, 2, there we go. There we go, last one. Now we're gonna take the ball joint / U-joint press that I rented from AutoZone, and we're gonna use this to press that joint out. It's essentially a oversized C-clamp. Just make sure you have it installed correctly before you start tightening down on this threaded piece here. And you also want to check the bottom to make sure that is correctly aligned so the U-joint has a place to come out. Otherwise, it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, now flip that over. We're gonna take another pair of pliers and take the cap off of this side here. And you can see this is the bad one. I'm not sure how well you're actually gonna be able to see that, but there's supposed to be needle bearings in here and they have all turned to dust. And this is also missing the rubber or plastic boot that helps to protect sand, dirt, and whatever from getting into those bearings. So that is no longer on here, as well as the bearing. So that is the cause of the vibration. You can see all the remnants of dust that is what used to be the needle bearings. So we're gonna continue this back through the other side. Again, you wanna check to make sure the bottom is aligned. And then we'll hit it with the impact. There we go. Just pull this cap off. Set that aside. And now we can get to work on the other two. Same process, just use the pliers, get the cap off. There we go. Before we install the new ones, we want to clean out the groove where that retaining clip sits in. So I'll just take a flathead screwdriver and go around that ridge. Same thing to the other side. And then make sure you do it on this as well before we get this installed. Wipe that down. Just want to make sure that those clips get seated in there well without any issues. Now we can take the new U-joint. We're going to take the caps off of two sides here. And then we'll slide it into place, like so. Slide the caps back on. And Now we just need to press it back into its spot and get the retaining clips installed. Do the same thing on this side, and then we should be set. You want to make sure when you take these caps off, take a look inside. Those needle bearings can fall in. Make sure none of those are off of the walls of the cap before you install it. When you're pressing them into place, you don't want to go too far. You just want to go past where that ridge is so that you can install those clips. There we go. Same thing on this side. Okay. Same thing for this, just make sure that you are lining up the mark that you made earlier so that everything stays in balance. We'll slide that on. And then we can slide the cap back on. All right, everything is installed now, so we can get this reinstalled into the car, and hopefully that should take care of our issue. So when you go to reinstall your drive shaft, you want to make sure that when you're inserting it into the transmission, you're not forcing it in. It is keyed, so it should slide right into place, like so. Now we can reinstall the two 14mm bolts that are holding the drive shaft up. And then we'll do the 4 bolts and nuts for the rear diff. And if you guys are curious on the torque specs, I will leave everything down in the description. Again, for the rear, you want to make sure you are lining up that reference mark that you made. All right, now I just need to torque these to spec and we are good to go. That pretty much wraps it up, guys. Not too difficult of an install. It does take a little bit of time, especially if you're doing this for the first time, but it's nothing to be scared of. It's pretty straightforward. Like I said, I borrowed that U-joint press from AutoZone, so that'll save you a little bit of money. You don't need to go out and buy one. They're expensive and you're probably not gonna be using it that often anyway. I'll leave a link to all of the other tools and the seal and the torque specs down in the description for those of you who are looking to do this yourself. If you guys have any questions, let me know. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.